first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Welcome to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. As always, thanks for joining us here today. We are live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, our website, and our apps. Always like to remind everybody of that because you can go to all of those places as well and watch the segments afterward. And we cover myriad topics here on this show. But right now, we're talking about something that's happening this week, and that is National Teacher Appreciation Week. Thank you to all of the teachers that are out there. And we got to discuss all of that with the National Education Association President, Becky Pringle. So we talk about Teacher Appreciation Week, obviously, but also we cover some of the struggles that teachers are facing and some of the issues that are happening in education here in the United States and here in Portland and Oregon as well. So we cover, like I mentioned, a wide range of things during this interview. We didn't have a ton of time to speak with her, but it was really nice to have that here today. Just to cover that. So this was earlier today that we spoke to her. So we're going to go ahead and run this right now, and then we'll talk about it afterward. But here's Becky Pringle on Fox 12 Now. You know, it is National Teacher Appreciation Week. And so to start off, would you mind just telling us a little bit about that and what that means to you?
Well, Greg, our First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, started this as a tradition many decades ago. And here we are in 2024, still celebrating. But we know in this moment, it should not just be a day or a week. We should be celebrating and lifting up our teachers every day of every week of every month throughout the entire year, because we know the important work they do for our students and, quite honestly, for our country.
Well, and when it comes to that, let's talk about this a little bit more. So what do you think are some of the biggest challenges when it comes for teachers right now?
You know, Greg, we've been talking a lot about educator shortage, and our educators are feeling it because there are not enough of them in their classrooms and schools across the country. We were shocked at the NEA when we surveyed them, and they told us that 55% of them were planning, not talking about, but planning on leaving the profession. And when we dug into those numbers, our teachers of color were leaving at even a higher rate, over 60%, at a time when we need to be diversifying our profession. And when we asked them why, they lifted up really the problem and what will ultimately be the solution. They talked about the big R, respect. And what they meant by that word was, of course, they should be paid in a way that reflects the professionals they are. They should not still have a wage penalty gap between them and other professions that have the same amount of experience and the same amount of education. And then they talk about the time they need to work with their students so they can have the one-on-one attention every student needs. And then they talk about them as professionals being able to make teaching and learning decisions for their students. So they have the freedom to teach, and our students have the freedom to learn the rich and complete and true history of this nation, both our triumphs and our tragedies, so that they can see the connections to this day and they can be those critical thinkers and collaborative problem solvers we need them to be.
A few things that you touched on in there. One, I wanted to talk about when we talk about that the wage and salary. You know, certainly here in Oregon, we've seen this come up. Portland Public Schools, there was a strike there, and actually strikes in several different places around the state. A lot of it having to do with salary and wage gaps. And what do you think is the best way to go about handling the issue of increasing wages for teachers, but also then conversely, if you do that, there's the threat of having to cut teacher positions or cut programs in order to balance that budget. What do you think is the best way to go about doing that to maintain everything?
Well, you know, first of all, I was there in Portland with our educators there, and I'm so proud of the stand they took, not just for their salaries. They used their strategy to incorporate their communities and have their parents talk about what they needed for their students. And so when they took that action, it wasn't just for salaries, it was for their students and parents getting what they needed and deserved. And the reality is that we should never be making that false choice between whether we're going to pay our teachers or we're going to have enough of them, whether we're going to pay our teachers or we're going to have the resources our students need. Those things are intertwined. For our students to be successful, they all need caring, qualified teachers in every one of their classes, and they need enough of them. Greg, it's never been an issue of whether this country or the state of Oregon has the wealth. We have the wealth. The question always is, do we have the will to do what we know is right? So we are laying the foundation for this democracy and for the future of our children.
Something else that you brought up, talking about teachers leaving the profession, and in particular some really stark statistics that you had there. What are some ways that you believe that we can increase that and bring some of these teachers back, or at least keep them from leaving the profession as a whole?
We need to start certainly at the beginning of the pipeline, where we're recruiting the students in colleges to come into our profession. We saw a disturbing trend over the last decade and a half where the number of students choosing education as a profession was declining, and that increased after the pandemic, certainly. So we have to listen to them and find out from them why, what's the barrier for them. Sometimes it's a barrier just to get into the profession. Many times it is the fact that they have these crushing student loans. That's why we're so thankful to the Biden-Harris administration for addressing the student loan crisis, so those students can continue to pursue, if they have chosen education, to continue to pursue it and then stay in it once they get in it. They don't have to make choices about whether they're going to buy a house or start a family. So that's huge. But we also need to make sure that we create spaces in our classrooms, and we need plentiful resources to do this, that are safe and welcoming, that are full of joy and a love of learning, that students and teachers have that time to build relationships with each other and parents and other adults. Those are the kinds of issues that we hear about, and we need to ensure that we have the resources to create that, so that every single public school has the resources that our best public schools have, so that our students, everyone, can get what they need and deserve.
One of the things that I think the pandemic really highlighted was some of that difference between rural schools and urban schools, and it still stays to this day, and that has to do with access to broadband internet. How important do you think it is to have broadband internet access in today's education?
Oh my goodness, in the world of AI, it's absolutely essential. In February of 2020, you're not going to believe this, Greg, NEA convened a group of 60 organizations at the end of February 2020 to talk about what we call the homework gap. And we were calling it that because so many of our students were going home with assignments that did require that they had access to the internet, that they had technology, they had tools at home to complete their homework. And then in a month, it wasn't just about homework, was it? It was about whether they could continue to learn, because the entire world went online. Even as our students are fully back in person, it just has gotten to a place where we know they cannot learn to their fullest without the access to technology and the tools. And so we know that, and particularly in our rural areas, that's always been a problem. That's not a new problem. But now we know for certain those students need that connectivity. And then they need the resources to have the devices, so that they are not left behind, those students that have them.
Well, my final question here is just, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, teacher appreciation. What do you think is something that everybody at home can do to show their appreciation to teachers in their area?
Well, now, Greg, I taught for 31 years, middle school schoolers, the love of science. And I can tell you from experience, we love the apples, both real and ceramic. We love the bracelets, and we love the perfume and the gift certificates. We love all of that. We do. But this year, please go to NEA.org/ Thank a Teacher, where you'll be able to tell your incredible stories about the difference that teachers have made in your lives. And not just our teachers, our custodians and bus drivers, our counselors and nurses, all of the educators that surround our students with the love and support they need. And then you can get information and you can take action. Join our movement to promote and protect and strengthen public education so that our students have what they need when they need it. And what they need is a caring, qualified teacher in every one of their classes. And for that to happen, we need to make sure they are respected, they are paid, and they are surrounded with resources so they can do the jobs they love.
Becky, thank you very much for joining us here today. I really appreciate your input and thank you for your service, for for what you did for teaching for 31 years, as you said, and then now obviously as president of the association. And thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, so there we go. Again, thank you to Becky Pringle, president of the National Education Association, for joining us here on Fox 12 Now, and thank you for watching this show. And of course, thanks to all the teachers out there. And we do have more coming up this afternoon, so I encourage you to download the Fox 12 Oregon app, whatever device you have, whether it's on your phone or your Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku, whatever it may be. We've got an app there, and so you can download that and watch the show directly from that. Of course, everything else here from Fox 12 Oregon as well. So coming up, I believe at 2:30, we're going to be speaking to Congresswoman Andrea Salinas, again here on Fox 12 Now, talking about mental health awareness. So something that's important to everyone. So we'll cover that for a little bit here on the show, but also if there's breaking news, we'll have that as well. So that's certainly something anytime between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. You can join us here. We will be covering that and bring you the news as we know and get you as much information as possible. You can always go to kptv.com as well. And that's it for right now. So I'll be talking to you in about an hour or so. Just have that app downloaded and you'll know when we go live. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.